Hi, Alan Stratton from As Wood Turns. When I obtain a batch of fresh green wood, I typically like to rough turn it, leaving it a little bit large, and then let it dry. That is the case for this little apricot bowl. But that was 5 years ago, and it is much more than dry right now. But when that happens, the bowl typically shrinks and warps, leaving a high spot on the two ends, and then it gets a bit narrow, and I have to leave enough wood to make it round again. But one part of the process is to somehow get rid of those humps. At times I just mount it to the chuck with tailstock pressure. This time, however, I decided to sand it off, and I can either use this 12-inch disc that I use on my small lathe, or I did make a big one, a big 20-inch that just barely fits onto my big lathe. So either one of those is usable for that purpose, to flatten it out so that I can then put it against the faceplate, retrim the tenon, and move on. But there's another aspect of this bowl that, because I have just a touch of post-traumatic stress disorder when I see apricot. Because it was about 5 years ago that another piece of wood from this very same tree had a bark inclusion, and I was turning that, and a 10-pound chunk of this wood flew off and hit me in the head. Well, I'm here to tell you about it, and I'm here still making videos because I was wearing my face shield, and it protected my face from the impact of that flying block of wood. So that is why, if you haven't seen it, why I always say to wear your face shield. And I always do, because of that. If you have not seen it, go back and look at it. If you haven't seen it for a while, it's a good refresher if you're not wearing your face mask. So let's go ahead and make this, do the final work on this little apricot bowl. To start, I'm using my 20-inch sanding disc mounted to my lathe. It's made from a steel faceplate and 1/4 inch aluminum. For my small lathe, I use a 12-inch diameter MDF faceplate. For now, I only need to sand down the high points from the warping. The one problem with this disc is its momentum. I have to be sure to slow it down gradually to avoid it spinning off the spindle as the lathe breaks. The next objective is to recut the tenon. Fortunately, I still have the mark from the live center from the rough turning. I'm pressing the bowl against a wood faceplate with tailstock pressure. I've also at times simply pressed the bowl against my chuck. This would mar the inside, but since I'm tooling it out anyway, that does not matter. But I like my assortment of threaded wood faceplates. They come in handy, and if I need another one or a different size, I just make one. Now that I can mount the bowl on the tenon into the chuck, I'm almost ready to go. But I always like to have some tailstock pressure when I can. So I'm mounting a small cone fitted to the live center. This can apply some pressure while I start refining the bowl. It's good insurance. I'm starting with the exterior with my large gouge, mostly with a shear scrape action. A push cut is difficult here between the bowl and the headstock. The bowl is out of round, but not to an extreme. I'm wanting to maximize the outer shape, so I want to minimize what I'm removing now. I have plenty of wood near the foot. In July 2012, this roughed out bowl weighed 668 grams. I coated it with green wood sealer and stored it for a while in a paper sack until dry. Now, before turning, it weighs 449 grams. This is a 32% change from its original weight that is lost while drying. A typical result for me. For the interior, I'm still using my large bowl gouge. I just have to be careful starting out my cuts since the sides are out of round. I aim for a point on the lip that is solid wood clear around the edge. From this point I can ride the bevel despite the varying wall thickness to remove most of the difference. Once even, it's a matter of reducing the wall thickness and becomes much like any other dry bowl. I'm aiming for about 1/4 inch wall thickness. I finish off with a heavy bowl scraper before power sanding with a 2-inch disc. Now for the foot. I have a lot of wood to remove, but I don't want a funnel. I'm using my shop-made coal jaws. I cannot run them at a high RPM, so the turning is a bit rough. I have to be very gentle. I'm trying to make most of my cuts with pressure pressing toward the headstock. I'm using a small spindle gouge and cleaning up with my skew as a scraper. There is always a difference when a bowl is flipped. Removing all of the difference is nearly impossible. My task is to blend it into the previous exterior, then hand sand to finish the blending. The foot is fairly plain. I want to dress it up just a little before I sign it. Using a point tool, I'm cutting a couple of shallow grooves near the center. Then sign it with my shop-built pyrography pen and power supply. Then just a touch of 400 grit sandpaper to remove any edge from the burning. I'm finishing this bowl with walnut oil. When the oil is dry, I'll buff it out for a nice sheen. It's a pretty bowl. Since it is dry, it should not warp anymore. I like it. It is a great medicine for my PTSD. That's all for this bowl. We'll see you again next week for another wood turning video. Please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, and tell your friends. Always wear your full face shield. Goggles are not enough protection. Until next week, this is Alan Stratton from As Wood Turns. Let's keep turning.